Everything seems to be going well, and just really excited to have you all here. And thank you for the time. This is what civic engagement looks like, having everyone here. I'm doing double duty tonight at an event with some of my colleagues, but just wanted to stop by and just thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Winston. We do appreciate that. And we are now streaming live to Facebook. So again, I'm just going to welcome the Facebook group as well. Good evening again, and welcome to the Southeast and Southwest Study Group. This is Southside Trail segments 2 through 5 construction and segment 6 design updates. And it's our virtual public meeting tonight. So I want to thank you again for participating with you and with me. Again, I am Rashida Williamson. I am a Community Engagement Manager for the Atlanta Beltline Incorporated, or ABI, which is the organization responsible for implementing the vision of the Beltline. Now, we have enabled live transcription, and if you would like to view this option, please just click Live Transcript at the bottom of your screen to select your preferences. Additionally, tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on our website at beltline.org/meetings. Now, I want to let you know that we have several members on the ABI team, as well as any other consultant teams that we may have on the call tonight. So again, Atlanta Beltline Incorporated is committed to creating a culture within an organization that values and advances equity and inclusion. So part of that means that representation of our 45 plus Beltline neighborhoods on staff. So the staff members participating with you tonight represent those various disciplines across ABI's organization, and they're here to support you with an experience that is this presentation, Q&A, and Facebook Live. So now I'm just going to provide an overview of the meeting format for tonight. We are joined now. Let me see about how many participants in the Zoom room. 5 at this moment in time. I'm going to state we have 5 in this Zoom virtual meeting platform, but again, we are streaming live to Facebook. So if you are watching on the Zoom platform or Facebook Live, you can follow along at the top of each slide. And if you are listening by phone, I'm just going to walk you through the meeting agenda now. So our agenda tonight has opened with a welcome and meeting logistics, and we will follow this with an audience polling and a Beltline 101. And after that, we will have a presentation on our Southeast and Southwest study groups, Southside Trail segments 2 through 5 construction updates, and then segment 6 design. Now, this presentation is going to follow with a Q&A, and that portion is just going to have any questions, comments, or concerns or conversation that you would like. Now, we're going to ask you not to place any questions in the Q&A box until we get to that portion of the agenda. Questions placed in the Q&A box prior to the completion of the presentation will be dismissed to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to hear the presentation without distraction. And dismissed questions can be retrieved in the answer section of the Q&A box and pasted back in the live portion of the Q&A box when the presentation is complete. Now, you may have noticed by now that your line is muted and you'll not be able to share your screen, but we're going to provide the best listening experience for everyone by doing so. So again, that recording of the meeting and the presentation and all other supporting materials will be made available online at www.beltline.org/meetings. Now, if you're having any technical difficulties during this meeting, please email engage@atlbeltline.org. And should we encounter any technical difficulties, we appreciate your patience as we sort them out. So before we jump into the project updates, as you know, we always like to start off with polling just to get a sense of the virtual room. So as we start the poll, you should see the question pop up on your screen. This feature is not available if you have called in or viewing in a browser online, but I will read the results to the group. So our first question, what neighborhood do you live in? So this is going to be a single choice question. I just want to know if you're from Capitol View Manor, Peoplestown, Pittsburgh, Sylvan Hills, High Point, Joyland. It's a lot of neighborhoods that are listed at this moment in time. And since we have such a smaller audience, it's going to be even more intimate. So I would like to know where the representation is from. So if I can get everyone to participate, that would greatly appreciate it. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and just end that poll, and I'll just read the results. So we have one that's possibly representing that Capitol View or Capitol View Manor, Peoplestown, or Pittsburgh. You have 3 representing Grant Park, Ormwood Park. And then you have 1 from Glenwood Park, Madison Yards, or Reynoldstown, and 1 in a neighborhood in the city that's not in the city of Atlanta, not on this list, and a neighborhood not in the city of Atlanta. So let's go ahead to that second polling question. We want to know, how long have you lived in your neighborhood? And again, this one is going to be single choice. So we're going to know if it's 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, or 11 or more years. And if you're on Facebook Live, you can also participate as well in the comments section. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and just end the poll, share the results. So I have 4 with 1 to 5 years in the neighborhood, 1 6 to 10 years, and 1 11 or more years. So the next polling question is, what is your relationship to the Atlanta Beltline? So this is going to be a multiple choice question, and we just want to know what represents you. You can choose as many as possible. So are you utilizing the trail? Are you a homeowner in a Beltline neighborhood? Do you rent a home in a Beltline neighborhood? A residential landlord in a Beltline neighborhood, or a business owner, a commercial landlord, a developer? Or you could be a real estate broker or just generally interested in the Beltline project, which I'm pretty sure those people that are in a neighborhood, not in the city of Atlanta. So that's really good. Okay, let's go ahead and end. All right. 6 people in the room use the trail. 5 are homeowners in a Beltline neighborhood. 7 are just generally interested in the Beltline project. So let's keep going to this next polling question. I want to know, what are you most likely to be doing on the trail? And again, this is multiple choice. I do see that our numbers are climbing with attendance. We do appreciate you and welcome you. Please participate in the polling questions. Again, we just want to know who's all in the room with us tonight. And this is multiple choice, so you can represent any of them. But we could go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Okay. We have 8 that use it for exercising or other recreation. We have 3 with running errands, 2 that go to work or school, 7 that just engage in leisure activities. So then our last question for the evening is tonight your first meeting? And this is single choice, just a yes or no. We always like to ask that question. And again, if I could have everyone to participate, that would be greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Okay, so we have 8 that says no and 1 that says yes. So again, between our listeners in the Zoom platform, Facebook Live, and by phone, we always do have at least that one person. So even in this small attendance room, we still have that one. So we want to thank you for participating. So right now I'm going to present to you a Beltline 101. It's just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so you could just have a high level overview of the Beltline's portfolio of projects. If we can go to that next slide. All right. We're going to start off with the vision statement, and that is to be the catalyst for making Atlanta a global beacon for equitable, inclusive, and sustainable city life. So part of that means goals with the partnership with MARTA. That's in its efforts to implement the 22 miles of light rail transit. Our other goals of 1,300 acres of new green space, 33 miles of multi-use trails, 5,600 units of affordable workforce housing, $10 billion in economic development, 48,000 in construction jobs, 50,000 in permanent jobs, public art, environmental cleanup, and community engagement, what we're doing tonight. So at this moment in time, I'm going to hand things over to our project managers, first starting off with Jennifer Distel, our senior project manager for Southside Trail segments 2 through 3.
Thank you, Rashida. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Distel. I'm the senior project manager that is overseeing segments 2 and 3 on Southside Trail. Next slide, please. So just to give an overview of the extent of segments 2 and 3, this is about a 1.8 mile stretch of trail between the 2 segments. It starts at Pittsburgh Yards at the end of segment 1, just to the west of I-75/85, and extends over to Milton for segment 2, and that Milton Avenue to Boulevard is segment 3 of the trail. The trail is 14 feet wide. We're going to have landscaping and fiber duct bank that's running below the trail itself, retaining walls, some bridge maintenance on this segment and upgrades, pedestrian lighting, and security cameras to make the experience feel safe and comfortable for you as you're using the trail. We're going to have new access points at Pryor Road, McDonough Boulevard, D.H. Stanton Park, Hill Street, Grant Street, and Grant Terrace. And the estimated completion of the project is the first quarter of 2026. Next slide. We want to give a special acknowledgement and thanks to the following entities, and they were responsible for providing significant financial support for this project. That's the Congressional Delegation for Congressionally Directed Spending, Funding, and Additional Support, U.S. Department of Transportation, Ray's Discretionary Grant Program, Atlanta Regional Commission Transportation Improvement Program, and the EPA's Brownfields Program. Next slide. Just a reminder, I know you all have seen the signs if you've come up to the gates, but both segments of this trail are under construction and closed. We do have some pretty dangerous activities going on right now. Some of the excavations that are happening out there are pretty deep, to the tune of about 30 feet deep. So we've got some very hazardous conditions between the traffic that's running up and down the trail and the construction that's underway. So we ask that you stay off of the trail while we're under construction. It'll keep everybody safe and allow the contractor to pursue their work unimpeded. So just appreciate your cooperation on this. Next slide. So the work that we're going to be doing over the next 4 months, it looks like a broken record because it is. We have a significant amount of storm drainage that is along both segments of the project. And this storm drainage is to be able to manage the water that is currently running wherever it wants to go, just with the natural terrain. We're going to be capturing it and holding it and preventing a lot of the ponding that's been happening, and also managing the water that we're creating as a part of the construction. So this is a lot of work that you'll never see. It's work that is under the ground, and it's going to take a significant amount of time. The D line and pond are west of Pryor. That's going to be a new pond that's going into the ground, and also the associated lines, and that'll be occurring from March 2025 to May of 2025. G line is east of Milton. That's going to be from October 2024, which we have started on, but it is extending a little bit further into March of 2025, east of Milton. E-line east of Pryor has been held up. We're probably not going to be starting until the beginning of March, and that's going to be a mass cut area that has a significant amount of pond work in the ground, extending through to March 2025. And then F-line and pond associated is right under the bridge. It's going to where the McDonald Tunnel is. That work is going to be from April 2025 to June 2025. And right now they are in the process of rehabbing the Pryor Road Bridge that is going to be a pedestrian crossing over Pryor Road itself. And they're in the process of pouring that deck. In fact, that was poured just this morning. So they're in the process of doing that rehabilitation on that bridge. Next slide, please. These are some of the photographs that are showing some of the work that's already been completed. The photographs that you're looking at here are 2 pictures of a H-pile wall that was installed. This will be a permanent wall that is in the ground. It's made of actual columns that are bored into the ground. That's what you're seeing in the left-hand picture. And then the wooden slats are placed between the steel piles that are put into the ground. And then there's a facing that's put on this wall that will be a concrete facing with a rubble veneer to make it look similar to the rest of the walls that we have along the trail. So that's one of the first walls going in. This is over near Pittsburgh Yards. Next slide, please. The work that you're looking at here are some of the underground storm drainage that I was alluding to in the other slides. And this is the work that is down at Pittsburgh Yards. This is our E-line and C-line that we have going in down at Pittsburgh Yards, and across the wall and then through the bridge down to where D-line is starting. So that's what these pictures represent. Next slide. As I explained, below the trail, we do have some duct bank that goes in to carry fiber for future use. And so photographs here are pictures of the fiber going in. We put a concrete cap on top of it to keep it from being dug into and to alert people that we've got fiber underneath this. That's how we warn other companies that are coming in, or other utilities that might be coming in to do work, that there is a significant fiber line or electrical line below it. The picture to the right is just the grading that's completed over the top of the fiber line once it's backfilled. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the mass cut that we have going on at D.H. Stanton Park. This is one of the major ponds. This is the area I was describing that's about 30 feet in the ground. The work has been slow because of the weather. Obviously, we've gotten our share of the winter weather. And also, we had some conditions that were left over from the previous owners of the property. Not only the railroad, but also this was an industrial area. So we're doing some cleanup in this area too, closer down to the apartments. but it's made the work slow. This is a significant haul-off area, and you can see the depth of the excavation that's being done here. So that's why we're asking you to stay off of the trail, because of these kinds of conditions. And all of the conduits you see sticking out of the ground there to the left are just some old fiber that was abandoned that we're going to be removing as a part of this grading process. Okay, next slide. This is additionally some photographs of that same operation with all of the trucks coming in and hauling. That's pretty much what they're doing nonstop, is bringing trucks in, hauling out the dirt, and continuing the grading according to the design. This is just another photograph of the pond itself taking shape. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to hand it over to Nancy Newell to talk about segments 4 and 5. Take it away, Nancy.
All right, thanks, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Newell, and I am the construction project manager for segments 4 and 5. And I will be giving y'all a construction update and showing you some photos as well. All right, next slide. All right, so this is just an overview of the project. Segments 4 and 5 run from Boulevard to Glenwood Avenue, and it's a little over a mile long, but we do have quite a bit going on during construction. We've got 2 bridges, we've got 3 pretty large ramps that are going in, as well as all of the other elements of the mainline trail that you have come to expect, including the 14-foot wide concrete trail, lighting and camera. We've got the duct bank, and we'll be finishing it up with landscaping. Construction started back in the summer of 2023. And for those of you that have been following along, you know that we ran into a couple of unforeseen issues, mostly utility related. So that pushed us back just a couple of months. So now we're looking at a completion date of this fall. And the contractor we have on board is Reeves Young. All right, next slide. And just to reiterate what Jennifer mentioned, talking about segments 2 and 3, segments 4 and 5 are also closed. We have installed these really gorgeous signs at pretty much all of our access points to the trail, but we are still seeing quite a bit of activity. And so we just want to remind everyone that the trail is closed, and it is a huge safety hazard. We've especially had some kids coming onto the trail. Seems like they are using that as their way home from school. And this is just especially dangerous because all of these machine operators don't really see the kids coming. They just kind of sneak up on them. And so it can be a pretty dangerous situation. So if you have children or neighbors or family or friends that are still using the trail, please just remind them that it is closed, and to help us stay on schedule and stay off of the trail. All right, next slide. All right, so this is our 4-month look ahead. These activities are not set in stone. Anything could happen that could push these or move them up. But right now, what we are expecting is to continue the work at United on the ramp and the bridge. The bridge was actually sandblasted, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And today they were out there installing the handrail that goes along the bridge. So there's probably going to be some more temporary lane closures on United. So just be aware of that. And we've also got the Del Mar ramp system and all of the walls that are finally completed. They were out there today pouring some of the drainage flumes for the ramp. And then we are expecting to actually pour the ramp. Well, we were going to try to do it this week. We'll see what what the rain tomorrow is going to do. It might have to be pushed back to next week to let it dry out a little bit. But once we finish there, we're pretty much gonna go to the segment between Boulevard and United and start all of that that earthwork, grading the ditches and the swales, and really prepping for that final trail elevation to pour the trail hopefully at the end of April. We'll also be bouncing back to Ormwood and resuming construction on the abutment on the north side of Ormwood for that pedestrian bridge that we're building. So if you live in the area, just be aware that there is going to be some noise once they start driving the piles for that second abutment. And then we've also got the other segments of trails that we'll be getting to later this summer. All right, next slide. And then next up, just has some progress photos for you all. These two photos right here were taken in the segment between Boulevard and United. The one on the left is actually looking towards the bridge at United, looking towards, I guess, Glenwood. So we have that wall that you can see there on the left-hand side, and that the top of the wall is actually going to be the trail elevation. We had to raise it a good bit here because if you recall back in 2020, we removed the existing United Avenue Bridge because it was too low. And so the new bridge will be a little bit higher. And so to meet that new grade, we had to ramp up the trail elevation to get that to line up. And then the photo on the right just shows some of the ditch work that we have underway. The weather has definitely not been on our side the past couple of weeks. So we really haven't been able to get much progress done here, but as soon as the weather breaks and we get some warmer, clearer days, we expect to really get rocking and rolling in that section. All right, next slide. And then these photos were taken at United Avenue. So this is on the, I guess, Ormwood or Glenwood side of United. The photo on the left is showing a wall that we constructed. This one is going to be covered up and only part of it is going to stick out. But this just kind of goes to show what all goes into this ramp system. And then the photo on the right is looking back towards Boulevard. And this is actually the abutment. And then there's a wall that we are constructing. And this is, we're having to fill this and compact it and raise that trail elevation to meet the new bridge height. Next slide. And then again, this just shows the ramp layout. On the left, you can see that column that's kind of cut off. That is the first column. And if you go clockwise around, the columns get shorter and shorter and closer to the ground. And so that you can kind of see how that ramp system will work out. We've got all of the columns installed, and in the center of this ramp, we are going to be excavating for a stormwater pond. And we are hoping to start that within the upcoming weeks. All right, next slide. And this is down at Delmar. So the photo on the left shows the Corten walls that we've installed. And all of that has been seeded. You can see the slopes up top. That's all been grassed over by now. So we've got those slopes stabilized. And then the photo on the right was taken on the top of the Delmar ramp. And again, we are expecting to pour this within the next couple of days. All right, next slide. I think this is the last one. So this is up top at Delmar. You can see where the where Delmar dead ends to the corridor. The photo on the left was the existing condition, that old nasty crusty guardrail, and the curb and gutter that we took out. And you can see the photo on the right was what they poured back, and they're actually going to be pouring more concrete on top of that throat for the new drainage structure. And the ramp will connect right there on the right side of where that curb is. All right, next slide. Okay, and I will pass it over to Sean Green to talk about segment 6.
Thanks, Nancy. Hey guys, Sean Green, Principal Engineer for Atlanta Beltline and Project Manager for the Segment 6 design effort. Let's tear into this. Next slide, please. So the overview remains about the same. The update that I have for you is that we have been awarded another $5 million worth of federal funds. That is pending a movement by the Atlanta Regional Commission Board. We expect that to happen this March, so within the next couple of weeks, and then that will be hopefully official. But we're in the preliminary design stage right now. 0 to 30% design is usually considered concept. We're coming up on 60% design, and that's the threshold for preliminary. And then everything after 60 is considered final. Next slide, please. So referencing the same map from JD and Nancy, segment 6 is up at the top of this little map here in purple and green, crossing I-20. Generally, we're running between Glenwood and Memorial, which is about almost a half mile long. Next slide, please. And as you might expect, we're being as consistent as we can with our design efforts to deliver consistent beltline across the city. So again, the 14-foot trail paving, lighting, cameras, landscaping. Because of the context of Bill Kennedy Way, which is generally what we're running on for segment 6, the design is very intentionally integrating into the design of Glenwood Park. So we have that going for us. There would be a new bridge, trail bridge over I-20, parallel to the existing Bill Kennedy Bridge over 20 and just to the east of it. And again, our focus here in this context is trail user safety, vulnerable road user safety, so pedestrians, bicyclists, scooterists, whether they're on the Beltline Trail or trying to get to it. So we're doing some modifications at the sidewalk corner of Memorial Drive. We're making some modifications to the crossings and the driveways to the public shopping center and the apartment complex north of 20. The I-20 off-ramp eastbound, as well as some modifications at Faith Avenue and Garrett Street, just because we're in the right of way. Next slide, please. Graphically orienting to this area with north being up, I-20 running east-west. Bill Kennedy and the project length is shown here in red in the middle of the page. But because PowerPoint is a landscape function, we're going to orient this on the next slide so that north is to the right. Thank you. This will make it easier. So north is to the right, which puts Memorial Drive on screen right and Glenwood Ave on screen left, with I-20 running in the middle of all of that. Next slide, please. And just the differentiation of the fact that we have two different owners of the street. Atlanta DOT, the city DOT owns generally between I-20 off-ramp and Glenwood Ave, and GDOT owns up to Memorial Drive. That's also state highway. Next slide, please. Just running through some, existing and proposed sections here. This is the existing section looking north from Glenwood towards Garrett Street. Next slide will show what we're proposing to do, which generally speaking requires that we remove the existing on-street parking. We'll be basically rebuilding Bill Kennedy Way from building face to building face in order to fit the Beltline in. That on-street parking goes away. the carriageway for the cars and bus and truck traffic gets shifted over to that curb to the west, and that opens up some space with some planters and buffers and whatnot to be able to put in the full 14-foot trail, as well as an ancillary sidewalk on the storefronts, excuse me. So doors opening out don't open out into the trail, they open out onto that ancillary sidewalk. Next slide, please. This is up a little bit farther north, looking towards Faith Avenue from Garrett Street. Next slide. Excuse me. Thank you. Again, the on-street parking goes away. The carriageway for vehicle traffic is shifted over, and we pull in the full 14-foot Beltline trail. The ancillary sidewalk here as well. All the stoops from the townhouses will tie into that ancillary sidewalk, and then there'll be a couple break points so that we don't have just people just rushing out onto the trail. They'll be coming in specific locations. Next slide, please. This is up by the Chick-fil-A and the MARTA bus stop. Next slide. Again, shifting the carriageway to the west, opening up some more space here. It's a little bit less right-of-way at this location. So you can see that the home access doors come out to the trail itself, but you can also see that buffer, that landscape buffer, so that when people step through that noise wall doorway, that they're not just stepping into the trail. They can look both ways and then make use of the trail at that point. Next slide. This is the existing bridge in all its splendor and glory. Next slide. And this is what we are proposing, which is, the full 14-foot trail with some buffer on either side because of the seat walls that are holding back some planter area. So this is, like I said, we are approaching 60% design. We'll have that submitted to us within the next several weeks. We'll do the review, and we'll probably be coming out to the community with more information over the course of the next quarter of the year. Next slide, please. So we are also doing a traffic study as part of this effort. Because of the Beltline being in the context and in the right-of-way of Bill Kennedy Way, just to reiterate some of the project goals in that context is really, really focusing on maximizing the comfort and safety of, Beltline trail users and other vulnerable road users. We've heard over the course of time about, safety concerns for vehicle traffic and the traffic congestion along Bill Kennedy Way. So we're going to take a look at that. And that's a lot of what this traffic study is doing as well. And then third most is, try to make sure that we're not just shifting problems to other locations without having some sort of mitigation. So minimizing the impacts as a result of trying to achieve goals 1 and 2 here. And the traffic study is our means to really be able to try to quantify that. So we're looking at the full network of streets here. We're probably going to be prohibiting certain specific movements at certain intersections, and then be looking at mitigation of whatever impacts we find from the traffic study. And so this map here is actually a heat map of the crash history from the last 5 years in the study area. So you can see that the crashes are most likely occurring at the intersections. And so we'll be taking, some safety looks at those intersections to really try to help that out. Next slide, please. And so within the traffic study, you can see here that there's a lot of access to and from Bill Kennedy Way, as well as to and from Glenwood Avenue within let's say the east side of Bill Kennedy, which is, Glenwood Park, the residential district. When you get to the west side, you have a much different land use context, very much a suburban big box. And you can see that access drops off precipitously. The great thing about the Enzo apartment complex there is that it kind of buffers the kind of it's not a traditional neighborhood in the sense that it's only 25 years old, but the urbanism of the neighborhood is actually really traditional, and the apartment complex helps to prevent or protect that neighborhood from all of the stuff from the Kroger and whatnot. Next slide. But we're looking at making a couple different changes here that the traffic study is going to help us to quantify. As we go from south to north, at Garrett Street, we're proposing to remove the westbound movement. So Garrett Street would become one-way eastbound from Bill Kennedy to the driveway there into the surface parking lot. And the reason for that is we see a kind of a close call kind of situation entirely too often, with cars pulling out into the trail to make a move to turn left or right onto Bill Kennedy Way. And so we really wanted to work to remove that conflict between vehicles and trail users. So vehicles will still be able to turn left or right from Bill Kennedy onto Faith and have that conflict. But with right now there's an always stop there, and that's going to be a lot easier to deal with than people trying to sneak a peek around the building corners. So I think that that's going to come out pretty well for Beltline users. The other one we're looking at is over by the Chick-fil-A and converting Faith Avenue on the west side, on the Chick-fil-A side, and make that one way from Bill Kennedy towards the Kroger. What that will help with is some turn radius issues that we know exist there, some trail connectivity that is lacking right now. We'll be able to make that connection, and it will really help to reduce some of the congestion that is there. So as we go through the traffic study, we'll be quantifying this, and we'll be feeding that information back to you guys so you know what we're proposing when all is said and done. Next slide. Excuse me. So this is the existing condition for the I-20 eastbound off-ramp. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the unfortunate cases of cars crashing through the Beltline barrier for the interim condition. The next slide shows one of the geometric concepts. We've been looking at the traffic volumes here as part of the traffic study, and we do not believe that an all-way stop is really going to be capable of handling the traffic demand that's there without creating a significant point of congestion, especially in the northbound direction. So I believe this is going to remain a traffic signal location, but we are looking at some of the other things in there, like the splitter island and putting a horizontal curve into Bill Kennedy Way to see about how we can make this a lot more visible to all users. And you can see the Beltline Trail, at least diagrammatically, in that kind of tan orange line going from bottom to top of the screen. Next slide, please. And then over by the Chick-fil-A on Faith Avenue, this isn't necessarily exactly what it's going to look like, but this is the spirit of the thing, where you would no longer be able to get from Kroger or from Chick-fil-A or from Enzo out to Bill Kennedy via Faith Avenue. That all the all the former eastbound traffic would be rerouted to Chester Avenue, to Glenwood Avenue, if they still wanted to go back to Bill Kennedy. And so we're trying to be as conservative as we can with our traffic study and just assume that every vehicle that enters the network in the existing condition, where it gets rerouted and reassigned to different links within that model, we are making sure that they are entering and exiting the model in the study network at the same place. So it might be a little bit more circuitous, but for the purposes of the safety and for the purposes of the congestion mitigation, we feel like that's going to end up being the right thing to do. Again, there'll be mitigation in other places as a result. So the next slide, I think, is going to talk to that point. Yeah, so This is the intersection of Chester coming down the hill on the left on the far side of that pedestrian flashing beacon, and Glenwood Avenue. This is looking east up towards Bill Kennedy. And we know that we're going to be pushing a lot more traffic to this intersection than currently exists. So we're looking at how we can mitigate that new traffic that's coming down Chester to turn left or right onto Glenwood. So we'll be looking at always stop. We'll be looking at the potential for a traffic signal here. And that information is under analysis right now. And we'll be coming to this intersection next, which is, this is looking west on Glenwood across Bill Kennedy. The Beltline construction that Nancy's got is on the left right now. And there's going to be a lot more left turns from Glenwood onto Bill Kennedy. But the problem is you can see the constrained environment we have here with the building face and the sidewalk location, and we have the transmission poles and distribution poles basically at the back of curb on the left side of the screen. So there's not the opportunity because of the ridiculous cost of moving those monster poles to put in a left turn lane to get from Glenwood onto Bill Kennedy. But we think that we're going to be able to solve that mitigation problem with traffic signal timing and just leave a little bit longer of a signal time for that left turn phase. Because Glenwood already has the majority of the signal timing for the cycle, it's probably not going to be that that big of a lift. So I think that was my last slide, and I'm going to hand it back to Rashida.
Thank you, Sean. All right, so we have now reached the portion of the agenda where it is open to all comments, questions, and concerns because we want to hear from you. So let's just discuss how we can participate in this conversation. So question and comments can be typed or verbally expressed by raising your hand. And our audience, again, is going to be made up of our Zoom online phone attendees as well as Facebook Live attendees. So I'm going to briefly review how you all can contribute to this conversation. For my phone attendees, if you would like to speak, press *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand and when the discussion begins. And a member of our team will open your line when it is your turn, and your phone will prompt you to press *6 to unmute yourself. For my online attendees, you can submit a response at any time in the Q&A box. In addition, you can upvote a response by clicking the thumbs up icon. The raise your hand feature is available for you all as Zoom participants. However, we're going to prioritize those phone attendees. And for my Facebook Live attendees, please feel free to participate in the comments section, and someone from our staff will make sure that I see your question. So at this time, I'm going to allow the people whose questions were asked during the presentation, they were dismissed. I'm going to allow you to go ahead and copy and paste it back in the Q&A box. I do have a few questions from Facebook. So as we're gathering those questions, I do want to say we do apologize for the technical issues that we're having this evening. I know some people weren't able to join the Zoom. We tried to send out that link to as many people as possible. We do apologize for that, but a live recording of this meeting will be on our website, and also it'll be stored on our Facebook page. So if you can, just view from Facebook Live. So some of the Facebook Live questions I've gotten, the first question is for you, Sean. And I know it's not copy and pasted, but when will Bill Kennedy section be redone?
We are trying to have our design work for both sections done summer of 26. So yeah, that's right. Summer of 26, fiscal 27. So the construction could start sooner on the city side because that's less of a permitting lift, if you will. With the federal funding, there's a lot more strings to get through the process to get to construction. So we might be able to do this such that we start at Glenwood and start construction, get up to the bridge, get up to Faith Avenue and finish that construction while the second contractor is mobilizing to start construction from Faith Ave North to Memorial Drive. So we're still working on that. We're, like I said, not yet at 60% plan. So we'll come up with way better construction staging and potential schedule for how we finish up our engineering phase before construction starts. And we'll have a lot more information once we get into final design over the course of the next 4 or 5 months.
Question is for you again, Sean. This is from a Facebook Live attendee. His name is Garrett. He said, proposed improvements look great. Renderings are also impressively accurate. What software are these created in?
I will tell you honestly, I have no idea what the software is. I can find out. We can circle back somehow, but um, our sub consultants at Perez Planning have done some really great work for us. Now, I also want to just make sure that everybody understands that those renderings are concept level renderings. They're not going to be one for one what gets constructed, because we have to go through the design process to get to the construction docs. So those are visualizations for the purpose of portraying the idea and the intent. And as we go through the design, we tend to not go back and redo the renderings, but we may end up with a couple that we can develop and tie down a lot tighter than what we've got right now.
All right, and this last question is from Facebook, and this is actually the comment. This is from Logan. With rerouting traffic down Chester to Glenwood, please consider enhanced visibility or traffic calming at that intersection. Drivers currently fly down the hill into the crosswalk.
Yeah, I hear you. I've watched that. It's kind of nuts how fast people are going down that hill. I think the addition of more volume to that will start to help slow that down a little bit, just because there'll be other people using it. But yeah, one of the biggest concerns I have is kind of the limited sight distance if you're at the stop bar on Chester trying to turn left or right out onto Glenwood Avenue, that there's just not really enough sight distance, and we're going to be looking into that as well.
Thank you. This question is going to be for all three of you all. This is from Charles Walker in the Q&A box. So he's referring to segments 2, 3, 4, and 5, but he's talking about public transportation. So I just want to be sure. So it says, could you describe any aspects of the current construction that are being completed now to facilitate the construction, which is speeding up of public transportation, light rail on the Southside Trail? So if you want us to ask him for a different question, but if you want to tackle it, all three, you do so.
I can speak for 4 and 5 between Boulevard and Glenwood. So we are actually building a new bridge at United Avenue, and the abutments will be able to accommodate both a trail bridge as well as the transit bridge. We are only constructing the trail bridge as part of this project, but when transit does come through, they will have the abutments that can support that load. They'll just have to span across United. And then down at Ormwood Avenue, we are actually preserving the existing bridge for future transit use, if that's feasible. And we are building a second bridge for pedestrians just on, I guess, the west side of it. And then we also build, outside of the transit envelope that we preserve, and we are very selective about the plantings that we put in there. And we really just try to stay out of our own way in that aspect. And I guess, Sean, if you'd like to add anything.
The only thing I'd add is that for the most part, the trail design leaves the space for the transit guideway in a lot of different places. Now, that's not to say it's always going to be the case. And we have a Beltline transit study that's actually looking at the southwest and southeast quadrants of the Beltline loop right now. We'll be probably coming out to the community, I'm going to say on a May timeframe with draft recommendations. We did a big push for transit community engagement back in the fall, September, October, November, December. I think I was doing 2 or 3 meetings a week. So you can hop on the Beltline website and find the links to the transit meetings that we had in September and October, and get a lot more information about that there as well.
I would just add on segments 2 and 3, the corridor that we had was very narrow, and there really are not a lot of improvements being done to assist the construction of the light rail transit. So it's going to be a fairly big modification in segments 2 and 3 to handle the light rail.
Thank you all for tackling that question. This next question is from Ed. Would Chick-fil-A be on the hook for improved pedestrian access across their property, i.e. one-way conversion of Faith, which is a great idea?
No, we would not impose that onto the Chick-fil-A. When they did their development, they had to do what they were obligated to do per city zoning, excuse me. But I wouldn't think it would be fair to change what the way the road worked without making them whole. So we will be, as part of our project, taking care of those modifications to Faith Ave.
Thank you, Sean. There's another question for you from Gavin. There's currently a problem with northbound traffic on Bill Kennedy Way not obeying the no turn on red sign at Faith. In the future, would turn on red be allowed? ? And if not, how would this be better enforced? Have turn signals been considered for turns off Bill Kennedy Way to Faith in both directions?
So we're in the process of actually looking at that right now. We are considering a no turn on red situation and would probably be promoting that continuing to promote that with the city. That way trail users don't have to worry about the right hook, so to speak, while they're trying to use the trail to go north-south. We're also looking at a potential northbound left prohibition, so that you cannot go from Bill Kennedy and turn left to go to Chick-fil-A or Kroger. And the reason for that is more a congestion mitigation than anything, because there's one vehicle turning left at that location just stops until they find a gap in traffic. And odds are that gap in traffic is coming from somebody, running the red light at the end of the cycle. So those are the kind of safety things that we're looking at that have a congestion mitigation element as well. In terms of a northbound left leading arrow, something like that, a green arrow, or right turn arrows or something like that to control turning movements. We're looking at the higher level stuff first, and we'll get to that. But my estimation is that ultimately we just need people to pay attention to the rules of the road as they are at the intersection, instead of having an expectation that they'll be able to turn right on red everywhere. And if it continues to be a problem, then we'll just have to work with Atlanta Police Department and Atlanta DOT to have some enforcement out there. Hopefully start with warnings. But if it still seems like it's a problem, then we can start not we Beltline, but the city can start issuing citations.
Thank you, Sean. And then this is just a comment from Charles. He just wanted to say thank you for answering the question. I do see I have a hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, so you should be able to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. I apologize. Having difficulties tonight with the technology, but I had a question about the South Corridor. Because for a while it's like no restrooms, it's no. I'm sorry, I'm on the Beltline walking home myself, so you hear people in the background. But it's like no restrooms for a good little minute before you get to the next venues at Glenwood and the South Terminal at Peopletown. So what's I know it may be a far stretch now because things are further along to like get a set of restrooms like configured if we work with Parks and Rec or something like that, because there's nothing really, we got the section at Boulevard too along the way, but I know we want to use the venues, but sometimes, you know what I'm saying, venues won't let us use the restrooms if we're coming off the trail. So what's your approach about that?
Thanks, Brian. Um, and I just blanked on the name of the park that Jennifer's doing the 30-foot cut at over by Boynton. Help
H.
me out.
Stanton.
Thank you. At Stanton Park,
Okay.
there's bathroom facilities there. And I hear you. Beltline has intentionally linked together parks and have upgraded parks and provided bathroom facilities within the parks. And then there are commercial venues along the way. The pizza joint at Boulevard, getting over to Glenwood Avenue. There's probably going to be more development, infill development along the way, as there has been elsewhere. It's just that they've been waiting for the trail to be built in a lot of cases because it's, if it's gravel versus if it's concrete, it's a lot more permanent. So I hear you, but the decision was a decision made a long time ago that there would not be bathrooms along the Beltline corridor because the Beltline corridor is the transportation corridor. Just it's the street without cars. It's the same reason that we only have the trash facilities at the access points is because of that. That's where we have the benches as well. So whether that was, reasonable people can disagree as to whether that was the right call or not, but that's the call that was made a long time ago.
All right. Comment from Ed. Great question. Restrooms on the Beltline. Thank you for answering our questions. We appreciate that, Ed. For Shariri, if that's how you pronounce your name, and I do apologize. Your question is, are there additional plans for commercial retail development on the Southside Trail? You're referring to segments 4 and 5 and 2 and 3. At this moment in time, we do not have a representative from the economic development team on our line, but I did email them to ask that question. So during this meeting, they may answer it. If not, I will reach out to you via email, and also I'll provide a Q&A report if anybody else would like the answer to that question. But I'm also going to let my team, if any of you all are aware of any commercial retail development that's coming soon for the Southside Trails 2 through 5. But if not, we'll move along because I see another hand raised. Okay. All right, you should be able to speak. Hello? I think it was you, Brian, but we can't hear you on our side. Are you pressing *6?
Hello?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be quick. I know that was the early years that they said, yes, we're going to abandon the restroom. But, we see that, we're not getting the transit anytime soon. I think the better, and this is my opinion as a resident in the Beltline neighborhood, that it's our restrooms are cheaper than the transit. So why, I understand we have, the anticipation with, venues and development coming along the corridor. What is it to her for, we're not asking for a full locker room along the strip. We're asking for, at least, a 2-stall men's restroom, a water fountain, something like that between at least Peoplestown or something like that. What's the likelihood of you going back to Watershed and to the city to allocate a certain amount for a restroom? Because, we're not getting the transit anytime soon. We hope to get the transit sometime soon. But, why can't we accomplish something simple as a restroom along the corridor?
Sure, Brian, I hear you. I absolutely hear you. What I'm telling you is that decision was made for lots of different reasons, and and it was made before I got to Beltline 11 years ago. I guess what I could, the next level of detail is I would tell you that for Beltline to bring water and sewer up or down to the corridor elevation is a pretty large undertaking, especially if we have to um, bring the sewer against gravity, right? To get it to drain. We have stormwater and we have stormwater outfalls, but that is a completely different issue when you're talking about sanitary sewer. The cost of the expansion of the water network would be something that would take away from other things that we would be trying to do. The money that would be going into transit would not be necessarily able to be spent on, water sewer type of hookups. And then really from a maintenance perspective, um, the Parks Department has bathrooms around the city in city parks. And so they have that experience, they have that staffing, they have that maintenance checklist, they have all of the stuff that they need to do for the maintenance of bathrooms within the parks. But if we just started putting up bathrooms, not to be pejorative, but randomly along the corridor, there's not going to be a really great way for the city to expand out to take that maintenance responsibility on, which is why it was determined that the parks, the actual city parks themselves, would be the places for the bathrooms and not along the Beltline corridor. So I hear you, man. I hear you.
Brian, you should be able to speak again. I see you raise your hand. Just press *6.
Okay, yes, I understand. So for future reference for us who are using the trail, okay, you said we have the park. So can we put on the grid on the map to say, hey, where are the nearest restrooms? Because again, yeah, we can use the venues for the restrooms. However, some venues say no, you can't use them. So it's like, darn if we do, darn if we don't. Since the parks have restrooms, is that something that's doable to like put on the Beltline map?
I don't think that you're going to see Beltline putting restroom wayfinding out, but we do have the plan to be putting out wayfinding to the parks, if nothing else, to the activity centers, to the districts. I can't remember if we're putting up mileage or if we're putting up estimated walking times or what we're putting up, but that's not something I'm working on directly, but I do know that we would be putting up some wayfinding for the purposes of getting to the parks.
And then Ed dropped a link to the compositing toilets. I don't know if you've heard of that. I guess he's just making.
Composting, yeah.
Oh, composting. I'm sorry. Yeah, so okay, we'll take that into consideration, or I believe Sean, that's an idea that's probably has been ran by, or
The composting toilets have been around for a while. I will
oh,
assume that was figured in, but I don't know for certain. I wasn't there.
got
This is
it.
just knowledge base from other stories I've heard over the course of time.
Okay. Brian, you should be able to speak.
Yes, I understand that this was before your time. But you see the concern, right? As far, and not just you, I know, because it's you who answering all the questions. But I would like to hear from the other team members to chime in on these questions. You see what I'm saying? Because okay, yeah, you build the trail. Then after the trail, how long is the warranty period before it's turned over to the city? And why can't we not? We already have the relationship already with the city and with other entities. Why can't we not like say, hey, put in a composting restroom? Because I understand, we have to do sewer and all that, but we have different alternatives for restrooms and water stations along the strip, because remember, if you look at that whole strip from segments 2, 3, 4, and 5 all the way to Glenwood, it's very open. I know we're banking on development. However, still, that's still a long stretch for someone who's thirsty or someone who can't get to the nearest restroom.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. At this time, I don't see any other questions. So what we're going to do is move along to the polling questions to continue out our meeting. So again, before we close out, we always have a few additional polling questions. And as we start the poll, you should see the question pop up on your screen. Now, this feature is not available if you have called in or viewing on the browser online through Facebook Live, but I will read the results to the group. And our first question is, was the information presented tonight helpful? All right, we can go ahead and end that poll and share the results. And we have majority yes. Now the last question, did you learn something new? Let's go ahead and end those polling results. Okay, we have a majority that says yes. We do have 2 that says need more clarity. So what we're going to do with this next slide, I'm going to share our contact information. This is for the different trail segments, but I am the community engagement manager for all 3. So if you'd like to email me, I can reach out to my specific project managers. But I do want to go ahead and thank all of them as well. So Sean, Jennifer, Nancy, thank you tonight for a wonderful presentation and all the updates that we provided in answering those questions. So again, we want to see you all on the Beltline, but we also want to thank you tonight, okay? Have a great night.